There were so many days when I was so filled with doubt, where I continued to question whether or not I'd actually made the right decision.
Hit the subscribe button and the bell notification to become part of the Transplant Helper community.
Without a doubt, one of the most common questions I ever receive associated with organ transplant is a very simple one. That is basically, is it worth it? Is it actually worth it to go through all the difficulty, all the pain, all the stress, all the anxiety, all the unknown things that you face in order to receive an organ transplant and even have a possibility of having your life to be extended? I know that's a good question because it's absolutely the question that I personally needed to have answered before I could even have the courage to proceed myself. Now, granted, I grew up a congenital heart patient. That is, I was born with a congenital defect known as transposition of the great arteries. Therefore, even with a corrective surgery being done at 6 months old, my life was never what most would expect or desire. I had difficulties, I had problems, I had issues, I had stressors that were placed on me even as a young child that most children never should have had to face. Not being able to play and run and jump and spend time and doing exactly the same activities as your peers, being restricted and told many times you can't do this or you can't do that because if you do, you might hurt yourself. That was pretty difficult growing up. Even as a teenager, as I got older, the best I could ever do was really just hide my condition and hide my issues and try to look normal, even though I knew all the while I really was not. Fast forward into young adulthood. I'm now married. I have 2 children. My wife knows I've had issues in the past, but really, we're not comprehending and we're certainly never discussing the potentials of those issues. Then there it was one day. At 32 years old, I began to get dizzy, lightheaded. My heart began to pound and then completely stop and flatline, and I knew the issues were altogether about to get bad. Over the course of approximately the next 6 years, I got down to the place where I had basically zero energy to do anything. It was very common for me to sleep 16, 18 hours a day. It was extremely common for me that if I woke up in the morning, got out of bed, and took a shower, that within itself would result in me needing about a 2 to 3 hour nap just to recover from that. It even got so bad that I began to connect the fact that every time I ate, all of my energy left me and I got too tired to do anything. And so I would basically go through the majority of the day, at least past breakfast and lunch, and never eat even one bite of food because I knew if I did, I would pay for that and that would be the end of my day. I had to face and deal with some things that I was not ready to face. And all the while, I'm being told in the background by my doctors, my coordinators, all the people involved, that you need a heart transplant. Jim, that is your only way out of this. That is the only way you're going to survive. You must proceed with this transplant. But I kept asking the simple question, is it actually worth it? Am I not better off functioning as I am, as limited as that was, and in some cases as miserable as that was? Am I not just dealing with the fact that I'd already had too many strokes as a result of the failure of my heart itself and the clots that have been thrown from that failure? Am I not better off just taking my chances and trying to live out my days with a heart that God put in me at birth and just trying to see if I could make it any longer? I mean, after all, I'd already made it 32 years relatively successfully, albeit not great, but relatively successfully. And now it had been extended even a little bit farther through medications and different treatments. Shouldn't I just forego the transplant and stick with what I have and see what I could get? Would it really be worth it? Again, that's a question I struggle to answer. That's a question I personally just could not come to a real good conclusion on. So what did I do? I started going to the hospital. I started going to the hospital by force because I was sick, but I started going out when I was there and walking the halls of that cardiology unit, later walking the halls of that heart transplant unit where other transplant patients were being housed, albeit I wasn't one as of yet. But I started going and walking up to those people and asking them, is it worth it? It's what you're going through right now. And I could see them. All the pain, all the tubes running out everywhere, the limitations that they had, the struggles that they had. They'd be out walking on walkers with 2 or 3, rehabilitation technicians holding them on the side. Is that actually worth it? You know what the overwhelming majority of answers always came down to? Yes, it's worth it. Having that opportunity of extending your life just another day to experience just that one more rewarding moment in life, that within itself makes it worth it. Now, that's not to say that I don't have troubles. That's not to say that I don't have really good days and sometimes some really bad days. But overall, organ transplant is absolutely worth it. We are so blessed today. We are so blessed by God and by the technology and the advancements that He has allowed us as human beings to access, that we even have an opportunity to do something like this. I mean, who could have thought that you could take one person's heart out of their body, basically discard it, take a heart from yet another lost life on the other side, pull that heart into their body, basically hook it up, get everything plugged in, and it would just go back to work? Who would have thought that? Who would have thought it would be possible to take a complicated organ like the kidney, as small as it is, but as complicated and complex as it is, and all the things that it does, and transplant that from one human being to another, and it would actually work? Who would have thought that a lung transplant, the largest organ in the body, the largest one, who would have thought that putting lungs or a lung from another human being into one, that they would actually bring in the air and blow it back out as we were designed to do? I would have never thought that. But yet that's where we are. That's where we stand right now. The wonderful gift of organ donation being made possible. And I'll tell you this, it is 100% worth it. I get phone calls all the time, typically from my team, who calls me and says, "Hey, Jim, we've got a patient here. They're needing this transplant or that. They're struggling with making that decision. They're really concerned that they're not making the right choice. And we would just like for you to talk with them. Just be honest with them. Just tell them about your experience and some of the experiences you've gained from others. Tell them about that and see if you can convince them that this is the way to go." To this point, I would say 100% of those people, 100%, I have said this is the right move for you. Now, it may not be the right move in the right moment. It may be that there's some things that you need to get in order or get arranged prior to facing transplant. It may be that there are some options that are available to you that need to be taken, some roads that need to be tested before you go down this long, journeyous road called transplant. But 100%, if that's the need, that is the way to go. Folks, transplant is absolutely worth it. So let me give you a piece of advice today. If you're someone who's facing transplant right now, and you're like I am, you're concerned, you're worried that maybe this is not the right move for you, sit down, speak with your team, speak with your family, do your research, do your study. Give me a call. My number's on the screen. I'd be happy to talk with you personally myself. But let's get ourselves to the point of knowing and having confidence that this is the move that can be made. There are options that are available, and this is your best opportunity at extending your life. And let organ transplant be a part of your life as the wonderful gift such as it has for myself and hundreds and thousands of others around the world today. Now, have I had moments since transplant, even after making my recovery, where I began to wonder, is it actually worth it, or maybe have some doubt? Yes, I've done it. I've got the card to prove it. But when you boil it all down and you bring it all back to reality, I'm here, I'm breathing, I'm functioning, I'm experiencing life that I would never have otherwise had. It's worth it. Stay stronger, friends.